Hello and welcome to Module 4 in Resource Management. We are looking at the categorization of needs in this module. Just a few things that we'll go over: the difference between needs and wants, looking at needs and how we apply that to families. We'll also explore the consumer resource exchange model, and then we'll talk a little bit about needs assessments and how we are seeing perceptions change of needs in our communities. So to get us started, all humans have the same basic needs. Members of every society have the same basic physiological resources for satisfying their needs. Humans everywhere develop a variety of derivative needs and desires that reflect their experiences as members of society. So what are some things that you need or want? The new and latest and greatest iPhone, coffee. If you're watching this on a Monday or an early morning, coffee might be what you need. Money, new car, a book, an Apple Watch, shelter, clothes, food. All of these we can look at and identify if these are needs or wants. Needs are things that are required for living. Wants are desired of typically, but they are not essential. So just a quick little story about a need versus a want that we might all could relate to. Whenever I was really young, growing up, we had a brother that lived in Missouri, and I remember us buying our very first computer that we were going to have at our house. And so this computer was so massive that part of it had to sit in between my mom and I on the way back from Missouri, and the rest of it fit in the trunk. We also put that in my parents' bedroom so that it could be monitored when I was on it versus not. And we also had dial-up. So at that point, a computer was a luxury, and it took a long time for us to get one. But now, owning one to do work and school, those are almost seen as necessities. So I'm curious what you would think when I tell you about a Nielsen TV survey in 2009, if this would have changed significantly. But they reported that while the average home in the U.S. had only 2.5 people, I know we have half people, there is an average of 2.93 TVs in each home. I think about now, our phones can even turn into TVs. So as you think about like needs and wants, these are sometimes blurred by context. When it comes to who influence us, it could be family, it could be the media, it could be having had a scarcity of needs or resources being met. And so when we think about wants versus needs, we can probably take that even back to our personal finance decision making. Okay, so we'll explore values and things like that and how those impact needs and wants a little bit later. So many of you have probably heard of the original Maslow's. This is just a new Maslow's that I put in here. Just kidding, it's not really. Here is one that I did feel like we see with technology meeting our needs. I think that this is pretty relevant, and we've always got new apps coming and going. But this is the actual Maslow's. This is on page 65. So the first foundational layer is physiological needs. Individuals really need these basic needs to be met so that they can look towards the next few. The next one up is safety. So being free from danger, feeling safe. The third one is love and belonging, needing to relate to others in meaningful ways. The next to last is esteem, so self-respect, status, confidence, recognition. And then the final one is self-actualization, being the best person, mother, father, or an athlete, however you identify that you could be. So on figure 4.2 in your text, you're going to see an updated hierarchy of fundamental human motives. With this, Maslow's original pyramid focused on motivation of humans viewed through perspective of evolutionary biology, anthropology, and psychology. The early interpretation of Maslow's work was based on two fundamental tenets. There are multiple independent fundamental motivational systems, and those are prioritized by individuals and groups. It's their belief that the concept of self-actualization is too broad in understanding the complexities of an experience that includes relationships such as parenting and marriage. So, in this, they are suggesting that the human motives are based not only on a person's internal needs, but also on an interaction that includes needs that result from the threats and opportunities in their environment. So, we're not officially targeting this as the new Maslow's, but this is an updated idea of Maslow's. And so, there's some situations in your text. I want you to read through those. So, pause this and read through them and see if you can identify which area of Maslow's we're looking at. And then in just a second, as I click forward, it's going to give you the answer. So take a minute, pause, and see if you can come up with what each of these is going to be in the examples that are in your text. Again, I'm going to pause for a second, give you a chance to pause, and that way you can see if you can identify under Maslow's hierarchy of needs which one each of these is addressing. Go ahead and pause, read through this situation and the scenarios. Got one more here. All right, and this is just a little bit extra to get you thinking about it. Kind of doing the same activity, but I've identified 2 video clips, and I want you to think about which on Maslow's pyramid are being addressed with these 2 video clips. So click on these, explore those, and see what you think. All right, moving right along into the consumer resource exchange model. This is embellishing Maslow's work, and we are looking at this from the standpoint that consumers manage resources to meet their needs or manipulate them potentially even. There are 4 basic assumptions, and I've highlighted those here in the video. You're going to be able to see that consumers seek to manage resources that enable them to function more effectively. Individual differences exist in the level of importance consumers attach to each of those 4 resource types. Resources exist as a part of interrelated and interdependent system, and time is a finite temporal space in which activities are performed. Time is not a consumer resource. So on page 69, again, lots of pausing in this video, I want you to check out the Peterson family. See if you can identify, before they do in the text, how they are meeting their needs with each of those 4 areas that we just looked at in the consumer resource exchange model. So 4 ways that we're categorizing our needs. Economic needs, so financial, and I think it's worth noting that needs vary from family to family. That's something that I feel like I should say. Physiological needs could be something like nutrition and healthcare, but you have to keep in mind, good health may vary depending on a person's desired quality of life. So just because one person says hey, we've met this need, another person may say, no, I want to keep going and even make myself a healthier individual. Psychological needs. It is said that individuals with higher levels of basic need satisfactions being met are better able to deal with stress. I think that that's important. Social needs. A family's social needs reflect their relatedness or affiliation within society. But it's something to think about back to needs varying from family to family and how we identify if we've met them or not. An alcoholic family member may be using their paycheck to support their habit, and even though they need to get professional help for their addiction, the family may not even recognize that, but they may focus on the fact that this person needs to be making more money. So how we identify these and how we view these in our families is very different. All right, moving into looking at what relative deprivation means. So when we are comparing what you have to what other people have, this is only one way that you can evaluate where you stand in society. When a person believes that they are deprived of those things that society says are necessary, it can really be the beginning point for that person to act. It can be a motivation for a positive improvement, or it could mean that that person stays where they are. Relative deprivation may also cause some people to overspend or steal when they believe that they deserve the items that they are obtaining. So just because someone is, we'll just say, in a lower SDS or poor, doesn't mean that they don't want what another poor person has. And just because someone is rich or well off doesn't mean that they don't want more. All right, so let's look at a few areas of changing perceptions of needs. You could probably identify an area underneath each of these categories. So circumstances, personality, economic status, gender differences, technology, culture, and lifespan. So when we think, I'll just pull out a few of these to highlight. Personality, consistent emotional thought and behavior patterns in a person. Peer group pressures that someone experiences as an adolescent will influence their behaviors and motivations as an adult. Circumstances, of course. When it comes to like events, so one example your book gives, I believe, is a child who has chicken pox may cause a family to have to change its schedule and sleeping arrangements for a short time, whereas a family that has a debilitating illness or like a stroke, that may result in a permanent change in their circumstance. Economic status, I think that most of you probably can identify that how that influences needs and how we meet those. And then what about culture? Digital divide, that's highlighted here because families who are in a better financial setting are 3 times more likely to have internet access from families who are in lower SES categories. And that's so important. Think about during COVID, how we all functioned with technology, right? So you could highlight probably how each of these perceptions of needs may look based on that topic or area that highlights. So I'm going to read this one. It is difficult to identify needs that are common to all groups or cultures. Not all cultures agree on identifying basic needs. An American may see a car as a basic need, but in a third world country, a car is a luxury or a want. And so then we also have to think about the range of need satisfiers varies greatly too. Differences in food, clothing, and traditions magnify the differences in the way various cultures meet their needs. I could even go back to the car situation. If you live in a city where there's public transportation, you can have access by walking. You may not need a car, may not want the headache of a car. But somewhere like in Arkansas where there's not as many opportunities for public transportation, a car is really a necessity in order to have access to food and our jobs. So you can see how difficult it is to identify those. So one thing that you may be responsible for in your professional life is a needs assessment. A needs assessment is an important tool to communicate the needs of some larger group that you're exploring. There are 3 things that needs assessments should be. They should be representative of the population being served, be current, and be only used for the population intended. Because if you're looking at this from another state or from another area, it can vary greatly in what individuals need in that particular area. So a lot of times, Cooperative Extension conducts needs assessments in order to identify what programming they need to offer in their offices. So that's a way that you might could use a needs assessment in the future. In our capstone course, you'll also use a needs assessment to identify how and what we need to do in order to complete our capstone experience. So individual versus societal needs. Meeting individual or family needs does not automatically mean that the needs of a society are fulfilled. So we're going to look at a few categories here. The first one is planned obsolescence. This is whenever the conscious decision on the part of a manufacturer to produce a consumer product that will become obsolete or non-functional in a time frame, like it's actually defined. So General Motors decided to spur a demand by creating dissatisfaction with a past model compared to new ones when it comes to the automobile's lifespan. They identified it as limited that way. Artificial obsolescence. This is where it's a phenomenon of the industry creating a new need for consumers that produces demand by creating dissatisfaction with past models. So when it comes to like fashion, this is a great example for artificial obsolescence. Fashion creates the need for new because of new styles and colors to replace those from previous seasons. Sustainable development. When we're looking at sustainable development, we are identifying this as something that can be maintained over time without being damaging to the environment. When it comes to sustainable development, there's a lot of conversation in that in our world right now. So when we're looking at individual versus societal needs, these are some of the three ways that we see society pushing us into having a need for something new. So to wrap up in Module 4, I want you to think it over. What is the difference between needs and wants? Are they different for everyone? Why or why not? When conducting a needs assessment, what should be included? What are those three things? So this is wrapping up Module 4. I hope that helps you really identify how we in family resource management look at needs and wants. Thank you.